All right, what's going on, guys? This is Rob, and we are back with Defenders Beyond, and we are here with two of the most powerful beings that you've never heard of, one of whom is a cosmic entity. So what this does here, picking up off the heels of the last video, is it initially picks up with Adam Brashear, the Blue Marvel, right? And so this guy actually saves President Kennedy from being taken out by Lee Harvey Oswald. Now, of course, he appears to President Kennedy and is just kind of like, imagine what would have happened if I'd have learned about this on TV. And he even goes as far as to tell him, like, you better have your concession speech ready, Mr. Kennedy, because the next time you hear from me, it's going to be in the primaries. And then following that, it picks up really in kind of the present day, after Blue Marvel has won the presidency and of course retired. The presidency was decades ago. And then in turn, it's just kind of celebrating with all the different members of the Avengers. And you'll notice the Avengers look different than they normally do. Spider-Man is still wearing the suit that he got in Secret Wars. The Beyonder is currently around, which he's not technically part of the Avengers. You're seeing a team and a group of people that don't necessarily exist in their current form. Tigra, for whatever reason that makes sense to nobody but Al Ewing, is basically the leader of the Avengers and has the power to lift Thor's hammer. It's one of these funny things because what you're seeing here is an alteration of reality. As most of you guys know from reading the history of Adam Brashear in Marvel Comics, he was asked to step down by President Kennedy, and where this story really seems to maintain that conversation between the two, unlike what we saw in the main Marvel Universe with Adam Brashear, in this reality, he chose not to step down, and in fact, he ignored President Kennedy's order and continued operating as a superhero, and was then successfully elected to the presidency of the United States. From there, you pick up with America Chavez, who has her sister in tow and has also met with her mothers in the utopian parallel, the real utopian parallel, right? So her mothers are alive. Beyond that, you have the arrival of Taya, the mother of Galactus, and when she gets there, of course, Galactus is in tow, which gives us the return of Lifebringer Galactus. Now, we're going to make sense of all this here in a second, because it's important that you understand what's going on here. Beyond the different alterations of reality involving like the Avengers and so on and so forth, this ties into the work that Al Ewing's done already. So for those of you guys who are unfamiliar with Taya and are unfamiliar with the Lifebringer, Taya was introduced in the main Defenders story that was written by Al Ewing. Technically, Defenders Beyond is kind of a spin-off slash sort of ending of the Defenders story as Al Ewing had done it. But Taya was brought in when you basically had the Defenders who had transitioned to the previous reality before the current one, and they had discovered the parents of Galactus. Now, it was kind of Al Ewing reworking everything, sort of adjusting everything to sort of fit his needs. But the thing about this is that Lifebringer Galactus originated in Al Ewing's Ultimates run. That in All New, All Different Marvel, when the Ultimates were launched, which was honestly, if I'm being quite frank with you guys, the Ultimates comic book was the best comic that no one was reading, right? That thing was the best thing going in All New, All Different Marvel. And I don't care what anybody says. It was a ridiculously phenomenal story. Check this out. The team was nuts. You had the Blue Marvel who led the team. You had Black Panther, America Chavez, Captain Marvel, Monica Rambeau, and then eventually you had Anti-Man Connor Sims. It was nuts. Like, it was so powerful. The first thing they did was fight and overpower Galactus and then continue his evolution, right? The situation that Al Ewing presented was that when Galactus emerged and started consuming worlds, that he hadn't fully evolved. What the Ultimates did is they evolved him to his final form, which was the Lifebringer. So he literally started traveling around the universe, bringing back all the worlds that he had previously consumed. It was pretty awesome. The crazy thing about this is that we get this kind of monologue coming from America Chavez where she says that for a moment, all of this just feels perfect. All of us together in celebration in an ideal world. There's not even any villains, which really begs the question, why do the Avengers even exist in the first place, right? That this whole thing is perfect and that it's too perfect. She realizes there's something on her face, that she's wearing the Eternity Mask, and that's when she breaks free of this false reality, and we realize that none of what she's seeing is actually real. Now, of course, Glorian is the one behind all of this, and he even goes so far as to alter reality and to say, okay, fine, if what you want is the real Galactus, then here's the real Galactus. And he shows her just like this monstrosity, Galactus like as we know him, right? The devourer of worlds. And it's kind of nuts because you have him really basically talking to America Chavez and coming to this realization, the Eternity Mask, even outside all universes, some things are universal, and it makes you the equal of anyone you fight, so it gives you the power to break free of my illusory worlds, but why would you want to fight me? Look what it's doing to all of the others. And so he goes as far as to tell America Chavez, look at Taya finally confronting the knowledge of what her little Gallon would become when that universe that they're in dies and he's born into the new universe. I could give her false hope again if you ask. And when America Chavez asks, what is this place? His response is, I told you, you're in the abyss, the land of couldn't be, shouldn't be, the furthest place from reality there is. Nothing happens here. There are no stories. And it's one of those things, because what Marvel really gives us and what Al Ewing's been doing, kind of consolidating really everything he's done in Marvel Comics so far, especially considering what we have here, is that, as we mentioned in the last video, you have a universe, right? The main Marvel universe, if we want to call it that. Beyond the main Marvel universe, you have the multiverse. Beyond the multiverse, you have the Beyond realm, where the Beyonders reside. Beyond that, you have the White Hot room, where the White Phoenix of the Crown resides. And then beyond that, you have this, the land of couldn't be, shouldn't be. Now, the funny thing about this is that Al Ewing didn't invent any of these. Outside of like the Far Shore, which is basically where cosmic entities go to die, and by all standards of measurement is the realm of the one above all, and I don't necessarily know how you reconcile that place with this place, the important thing here is that in these locations, right, in these realms, it was all invented before him. The land of couldn't be, shouldn't be, as far as I'm aware, that was invented by Dan Slott in his Silver Surfer run. Now, the thing about the land of couldn't be, shouldn't be, is that this is the place where basically only ideas reside, things that have never really come to fruition, right? So if the possibility exists out there, this is where that possibility resides before it becomes real. It's a very metatextual realm. But again, Glorian is the one that rules in this realm, seemingly at this place. Now, the reason why I say this guy's so astronomically powerful is because what this guy does is remove a piece of himself and create a whole entire multiverse out of it, like a multiverse of possibilities. Because as he's talking to America Chavez, he says, you're the one that's breaking things around here, America Chavez. What I want is to make these things true. Before I died, before I was trapped here, I had the chance to become the living personification of the multiverse. And my 8th cosmos would not have been a mere continuation. It would have been a cosmic reboot, a new beginning for everyone. What he's referring to is basically the universe as it exists now after the events of Secret Wars 2015. Remember, Jonathan Hickman's Avengers and New Avengers run basically detailed the idea of the Beyonders intending to wipe out the entirety of the multiverse. Had they been successful, the multiverse would have restarted because it's the natural order of things. But what Glorian is saying here is that in his mind, what he would have done after becoming the embodiment of all things in existence, the entirety of the multiverse, he would have rebooted. In some ways, I have to believe this is Al Ewing basically saying, if I were the one running the show, I would have rebooted the entire landscape of Marvel Comics. He says, look, America Chavez, look at what the dead land could be. And that's when it kind of astonishes her, because she's like, you're using your own substance to make an entire multiverse. And he says, for now, but if you choose this paradise that I've made for you, give it something of yours, we can keep it going together, i.e., if you believe in this, and if you choose to become a part of this reality, you will now exist in an alternate reality. You'll exist in an alternate universe because you believing in it has given it form. It's one of those really, really cool but metatextual things. And in fact, Glorian says, like, look at what I've done for all of you, right? Adam Brashear has the answer to the one question that torments him, what might have been. Taya gets to be proud of her son. Tigra's an A-lister with the respect of her peers, which is kind of funny because the reality is she's not an A-lister and no one cares about Tigra. And he says even the Beyonder is finally content in this world, surrounded by people who basically adore him. And it's just one of those things where it's like, you, America Chavez, you could have everything that you ever wanted. You could have your sister, your moms are alive, the utopian parallel is a place that you can go to. You can have a home. He says you can have the life that you've always wanted. Don't you feel like you deserve it? And her response isn't necessarily no to the question of does she deserve it? It's no to, do I want to live in this world? world. And she's like, I'll stick with what I've got. Now, that's what's so interesting about all this, is because the reality is that for us as people, right, for you, me, anybody else, our life is in some ways kind of governed and mired by the question, what if I had done this differently, right? Like, what if I had taken $100 and invested it in Bitcoin when it was trading at a fraction of a penny? I'd be a billionaire right now. I'd be astronomically rich. Well, maybe not with $100, but like, you'd have a lot more money than you have right now, right? Like, what if I had made this decision regarding college instead of that decision? What if I had gone to a trade school instead of college, right? What if I had done this or that or any number of things? I think for us as people, it's natural to look at the decisions that we've made over the course of our lives and to wonder, what if we had done something different? This conversation between Glorian, America Chavez, and even the other members of the Defenders who jump in, Taya showing up and saying, this is the kingdom of never, the true world of couldn't be, shouldn't be. If Galen plays Big Hungry in the cosmos to come, he has a key role in future history. That's the role that he's supposed to play. To fix him up, quote unquote, would be to wipe him out. And when Glorian's saying things like, I would do a reboot after reboot, right? I would just reboot over and over and over again until I got, quote unquote, the perfect universe, until I got it right. The response to Taya is like, is that really what it's going to be? Us as individuals here are just playthings for you to just kind of rewrite reality on your whim until you figure out what it is? Even Blue Marvel says, I'd rather live my own life, whether I made the right choices or not, than some cozy historical fiction. This is them sort of looking at Glorian and saying like, yes, we could kind of have this perfect world as you created. And yes, our lives would be rebooted over and over again. But the truth is, we are the people that we are because of the choices that we made. And so it's really kind of intriguing here, because when you have Glorian, he says, okay, fine, like nobody else is going to side with me, right? Fine, whatever, you guys are going to reject all this. That's cool. With the power of the Beyonder, I can draw on that and everything will be cool. If I can get the Beyonder to agree with this, I can draw on the Beyonder's power and do seemingly anything that I want to. And the funny thing about the Beyonder is, true, you could. I do have unlimited power. I could do virtually anything that I want to. I'm one of the most powerful beings in existence, but the reality is my only real desire is to understand desire. And seeing the Defenders resist your offers, well, that was just simply fascinating. And it makes me want to hear from all 5 of them, not the 4 that you've set free. And so he ultimately unleashes Loki and then brings Loki in. Now, the funny thing about this is, remember, Loki as he exists now is the god of stories, and they're in the land of couldn't be, shouldn't be, which means it's basically like writing on an empty page. Whatever Loki puts there becomes an absolute truth. That's the way this works. His power literally runs the opposite of Glorian's power. Glorian is imbued by all the possibilities that can exist, but he's limited to whatever Loki does, right? And so literally at that point going forward, Loki gets the Eternity Mask, right? It's literally handed to him by America Chavez. That makes him equal to Glorian. At that point, he just starts writing the narrative. He's just like, okay, cool, like, let's see what we can do. Loki holding this mask, he literally says, oh, I get it. The mask is a piece of eternity substance. With a handful of this, Glorian really could have made his dream world real, infected eternity from the inside. But unlike certain moldy golden oldies, I think outside the box. And so where he's begged by Glorian, the response of Loki is, see what I mean? Dull, dull, dull. You've got nothing I want, Glorian, not even a fight. Being equal to you is a step down with me wielding this eternity mask. But what else can I use a little piece of eternity for? Maybe to contact other cosmic entities? Who is a multiversal personification that I've got on speed dial? And this is when he draws the Queen of Nevers. Now, the Queen of Nevers is a ridiculously powerful cosmic entity, and depending on who's writing the story and how you handle it, her power could transcend that of the living tribunal. She'd be second to the one above all, and the reason why is because she represents the sum total of any and all possibilities. The possibility of the living tribunal being destroyed and never returning, the possibility of the one above all dying. She represents all these different things, and so as a result of that, her power is a reflection of that. Now again, it's one of these things where it's fast and loose. Some of you guys may kind of draw the conclusion, well, in that case, she's more powerful than the one above all. I mean, no, like Marvel does create a definitive hierarchy. The one above all is called the one above all for a reason. But she says, I'm called the Queen of Nevers, who is also Queen of Always. That it's one of those things where it's like anything that is possible, I represent all these different things. And so literally she whisks the defenders away from Glorian and brings them directly to her realm. And so that's where she says that much like eternity and infinity, she exists as a sort of balance here, right? That where eternity represents time and infinity represents space, that the Queen of Nevers, one part of her does represent couldn't be, shouldn't be, things that should never happen, things that should never take place, and things that can never take place because they shouldn't take place. But she also represents can be, shall be, which means things that can take place, therefore there are things that will take place, right? Basically, the ideas that Marvel Comics writers have that Marvel's approved of. I mean, if we're being honest here and we're using metatextual stuff, this Marvel editorial saying, you know what, we'll go ahead and go with that idea. That idea resides in the land of can be, shall be. The ideas where Marvel's just like, no, we're never going to do that. That resides in the land of couldn't be, shouldn't be, right? If we're using comics as a metatextual kind of representation of how Marvel does things, that's really how this stuff works. But again, what we have here is her talking about this notion of unchecked possibility, right? That unchecked possibility is definitively freedom. Even in your world, you'd be surprised at what can actually happen. Again, it's sort of this Al Ewing commentary on the fact that this idea of thinking that your life is somehow limited, right? Like you have to work a 9 to 5 because it's the only way to find success and it's the only way to retire, right? Like that's limited thinking. I make a living rambling about comic books for 30 minutes, right? Like, don't talk to me about what can or cannot be done. Your ability to achieve things in your life or in this life, especially in this digital age when everything is accessible at your fingertips, it's limited only by your imagination, right? It's one thing that I would love for you guys to take away from this is that at the end of the day, your ability to live your life and the things that you can achieve in your life is limited by your imagination. The important thing here is this, right? That in this conversation that takes place between like the defenders and so on, Loki says, but how come you're here instead of back there in the world that we came from? Not to be a downer, but I've experienced what's quote unquote possible there, and it absolutely hurt because Loki was turned into a tree. But she says, I'm on my journey, you're on yours, and none of us have the map. But she says, I can promise you one thing, my cynical storyteller, the journey never ends. Not even when we pass through the final door, defenders, the door to the godhood itself. And what she does is she presents them to the door of God and says, this door here, it leads to the house of ideas. Now, where that leads to, we'll find out in the next video. But with that being said, guys, we're going to bring this to an end. Thank you all for watching. Hopefully I was able to inspire you. I apologize for my little soapbox rants, but I will catch you all later. Peace.